All right, what we're going to do, we're going to finish up talking about section 3.4. Let's write this down. Section 3.4. All right, there's one little topic that we didn't get to when I first taught this thing. All right, and it's we're talking about slopes, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about slopes, and just had a quiz on this. If these two lines are parallel to each other, all right, we know about parallel lines and transversals and all that, but we haven't related slopes to parallel lines. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not even going to write these like that. I'm going to write it different. Let's write one like this. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it. All right, so it's exactly the same slant as this one. So if they're slanted exactly the same, what must be true about the lines? They must be parallel to each other. Okay. Well, let's talk about slopes of these lines. We'll call this line M and line L. All right. So if I took a look at line M and line L, is line M steeper than line L, or is it flatter, or what? What do you think? What do you think must be true about the slopes of these two lines right here?
They're the same.
They're exactly the same. Okay. Now they're not perpendicular. They're parallel to each other, but the slopes are exactly the same. You follow me? So when you have parallel lines, the slopes, what do you think? Are equal, right? The same, or we'll say equal. Okay, so when you have parallel lines, the slopes of any parallel lines, any lines that are parallel to each other, the slopes are going to be exactly the same. You with me? So if the slope of this one was, I don't know, rise over run, I don't know, let's say 2/3. Okay, let's say the slope of this one was 2/3. What would the slope of line L be? 2/3, right? Okay, not that hard. All right, because what did we just say? The slopes are equal to each other, right? So if I knew the slope of this line, then the slope of this line would be exactly the same. Let me do this. Watch. Slope of negative 5/7 x plus 3 and y equals negative 5/7 x minus, I don't know, 10. Look at these two lines right here. This is a line, isn't it? Slope-intercept form, right? Tell me something that we just talked about. Tell me something that's in common with these two lines right here. They have what? The same slope. They got the exact same slope. So tell me something about those two lines then. They have the same slope, but they must be what to each other then? They must be parallel. Without even graphing it, I can just look at it and say, okay, if the slopes are the same, then these lines are going to be parallel. Make sense? Okay, very good. Let's go to something else. Let's get rid of all this. And let's do another one. Now we talked about parallel lines. What do you think the next thing we're going to talk about is? Perpendicular. Okay, so watch. Here's a line right here. And I'm just going to try to eyeball it. Does that look perpendicular? Pretty close, right? Yep.
Yeah.
All right, it's perpendicular. Let's say the slope of this line right here, we'll call this line A and line B. Now technically, the lines keep on going forever, don't they? So we put arrows on them. And if they're perpendicular, let's take a look at the slope of this. Let's just make up, what do you think? Like to get from this point to this point, you rise and you run. You rise a little bit more than you run, doesn't it look like?
Yeah.
To get from one point to the other. So let's say, I don't know, 5/3. I'm just making that up, okay? Now look at this. Actually, I'm sorry. I went what? Tell you what. Sorry. Let's do the other one first. It's just a little easier. Let's do this one. So the slope of this line A right here. Watch. If I wanted to rise over run, I probably rise just a little bit and I run a little bit more, don't I? So let's rise 3 and run 5. Thank you. Thank you. All right, you with me? So watch. In order to get from this point to this point, let's say you rise 1, 2, 3, and you run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Positive, right? Positive rise and then positive run. Let's look at this slope right here. This looks like I do what?
Negative.
I rise negative and I run what? Positive. So what kind of, is this slope positive or negative?
Negative.
This slope is negative, isn't it? Now watch. This one, I rose a little bit and I ran more, right? So a little number over a bigger number. What about this one? I rise what? A bigger number and I run a little number. Do you see it? So the difference between these, instead of rising 3 and running 5, what do you think this does? This rises 5 and runs 3. Right, negative 5 over 3. Exactly right. Do you see that? This works for every single line that's perpendicular to each other. Any lines that are perpendicular to each other, this is always going to hold true. So let's say the slope of line 1 is, I don't know, 2/3. What's the slope of line 2 if they're perpendicular to each other? What do you think? Negative 3/2. Negative 3 over 2. Make sense? So look what we did. We changed the sign and we did what? Give me a good math word that we did from here to here. We took 2/3 and made it 3/2. Reciprocal. Very good. That's the math word I was looking for. We did the reciprocal. So what I say is this. Some people say opposite. I say it's the negative reciprocal. One slope to the other. Okay. So if I say that two lines are perpendicular to each other, their slopes are negative reciprocals. Negative means the opposite. Okay. Reciprocal means you flip the fraction. Let's do a couple other ones. Let's say the slope of one line was 4. Okay, so the slope of line 1, let's give myself some more room here. The slope of line 1 was 4. What's the slope of line 2 if the lines are perpendicular? Is it just negative 4? 4 over 1 is still the same as 4. What's the reciprocal of 4? It's 1 over 4. So it's negative 1 over 4. Do you see that? So what's the reciprocal of 4? 1 over 4. What's the opposite of positive? It's negative. That's if they're perpendicular. Remember, this only works if they're what? Perpendicular. Perpendicular. Okay? This only works if they're perpendicular. Let's do another one. Let's say the slope of line 1 was negative, I don't know, 5/7. Okay? It's not negative. It's what? Negative means the opposite. So if this is negative, what's this going to be? Positive 7/5. So that's what we know about perpendicular lines. And I'll collect that worksheet tomorrow. I still didn't go over those two problems, okay? So I said I'll collect that worksheet tomorrow. I just said it. Yes, we did it Tuesday, and I'm still collecting it tomorrow.